The House of Kuru, Part 2, Chapter 16. The Conquered King. Several months had passed since the son of Indra, Arjuna, had waged a two-man war against the walled city of Panchala and brought down the king of Panchala called Drupada, the son of Prishata. Drupada, upon facing the devastating defeat, was dragged in chains to the weapons master Guru Drona. Guru Drona wanted not to maim or kill his nemesis, but only teach him a lesson in humility. Once, Drupada apologized for his rant against Guru Drona when he approached him for support. Guru Drona forgave and forgot the entire incident, giving back half of the conquered kingdom and keeping the other half to keep this king in check. Drupada came back to the kingdom of Panchala with a new title, the Conquered King, a title which the king of Panchala did not get accustomed to. Everywhere he went, his own citizens began disrespecting him. Most moved from half of his kingdom to the one owned by Guru Drona. King Drupada even felt guilty when taxing his remaining citizens, as though every tax given by the citizens of Panchala was a donation by Guru Drona. I cannot bear this treatment. I feel so dejected, lamented the king to his brother Satyajit one morning. The citizens do not fear me. Half my kingdom is gone. I have been humiliated, he told his brother. Though Satyajit was an able commander and soldier, he was not able to uplift the spirits of the defeated king. All he could do was place an arm on his shoulder and nod politely. Drupada's wife, Yajnaseni, however, approached the king of Panchala and embraced him. My lord, this time your victor was benevolent. But what if tomorrow fate decides otherwise? What will happen to our house? The house of Prishata will be ruined, said the wife of the king, and that was when it hit him. Drupada, so focused on the expansion of his kingdom and power, had neglected to grow his house. Though the family had tried for progeny, they were unlucky in this pursuit. Time had now dawned for the king of Panchala to ensure his house continued. Drupada called on the royal preceptor in the palace to provide his thoughts on the matter. The royal preceptor of the Panchala kingdom arrived on the side of the king's throne and prostrated before the king. I am at the service of the royal king of Drupada. Please tell me how I can assist you, O Majesty, said the royal preceptor. I am devoid of sons, royal guru. With no son to continue my lineage, the house is under threat of extinction, said the king Drupada, while the royal preceptor nodded. I wish to have a son who would vanquish that member of the priestly class, the one who humiliated me and took half my kingdom, said Drupada, while the royal preceptor nodded, looking serene. O king, desiring a son is virtuous, but is desiring a son for the purpose of vengeance in line with virtue? Asked the royal preceptor. I have lost half my kingdom, and it is the duty of kings to obtain lands and conquer kingdoms. Therefore, dear priest, there is no fault in desiring vengeance, said the king Drupada curtly. The royal preceptor nodded and said, Dear king, what you seek is beyond my competence. But do not fear. I know a group of sages and seers who can help you with your desire. They trace their lineage to the great seer Rishya Shringa, who performed the Putrakameshti sacrifice for the king of Ayodhya, Dasharatha, to birth a son who would vanquish the evil king of demons known as Ravana. Approach that group of seers and beseech their help, and you shall have your desire, said the royal preceptor of the Panchala kingdom. King Drupada wasted no time leaving the kingdom in the hands of his brother. He leapt onto his chariot and sped to the location told by his royal preceptor. He traveled for days and weeks when finally, one day, on the banks of the Narmada river, as told by his preceptor, he saw a large settlement of sages and seers, who were engrossed in the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment by performing arduous austerities and severe penances. He entered the village, and at the gate was a dirty-looking sage munching on a half-eaten mango. His beard was littered with small trickles of food he had collected over the years and had a thick, strong scent. The king of Panchala, unaccustomed to such filth, had to cover his nose in order to go into the village. After entering the village, he began asking around for anyone who can perform the legendary Putrakameshti sacrifice. This was an intricately difficult fire sacrifice to perform, and only 1 in 1,000 sages could perform it aptly. All the sages pointed to a seer called Upayaja, and that was all he needed. O mighty sage, you are verily the form of Brahma, the creator god himself. I have come beseeching thy help, cried out the son of Prishata. The sage was cross-legged on top of an altar deep in meditation. Not wanting to risk his wrath, let alone his refusal in the process of obtaining a son who would slay his nemesis, King Drupada seated himself next to his left foot and waited patiently. Days passed and so did weeks, but this sage would not be perturbed from his deep meditation. Finally, one morning, early in the morning, the sage slowly opened his eyes. The king of Panchala was waiting with the choicest fruits, nuts, and berries. The sage was pleased. "Who are you, and why have you approached me? What is your purpose?" inquired the sage. Then the king poured on him sweet words of kindness and appreciation before making his request. "Dearest Brahmana, the best of the priests in the priestly class, I beseech you to help me with obtaining a son," said the king of Panchala. "Have the normal methods of procreation been exhausted, dear king? The performance of the Putrakameshti is arduous, difficult, and written with pearls," said the priest. "O kind priest, I do not desire an ordinary son, but one who would slay my nemesis, the son of Bharadwaja called Drona," said the king of Panchala. As the priest raised an eyebrow, "The son of Bharadwaja, the one they call Drona, he is a great Brahmana, devoted to the practice of austerities and established in virtue. The Putrakameshti is to be done for the purpose of upliftment of virtue, O king, and not to slake your thirst for revenge or other such petty issues," said Upayaja, and he got up from his seat and began to traverse the thick woods with the king of Panchala hot on his trail. "O priest, O mighty Brahmana, please do listen to me and the great injustice done to me," said the king Drupada. And despite his reluctance, Upayaja paid attention to the king Drupada's tale and listened patiently. "King, I still do not see a reason for the slaughter of a Brahmana. You are upset with your loss and desire such a heinous crime. Do not descend to the level of demons and rogues. You are a king, the king of Panchala Desha. Uphold the might of virtue and leave from my presence, as I have decided not to aid you," said the sage. But the king of Panchala would not take no for an answer. "Dearest priest, I offer you 10,000 cows and 100,000 dravina. This is all the wealth in the land. Please, please, I beg you, perform the Putrakameshti," begged the king, and the sage simply shook his head and proceeded deeper into the woods. But King Drupada would not relent. He stood by the sage, doting on his every need, carrying his load as he traversed through the mountains and forests, bringing water, fruits, and root vegetables for his food, but the sage would still not relent. Finally, after a year, the sage Upayaja felt pity on the king of Panchala as he saw him separating ripe fruits from the overripe ones before offering them to the sage. King Drupada had picked the choicest fruits for the sage and approached him with humility and offered them to the sage. You will not give up, will you? Asked the sage, and King Drupada shook his head. Very well. I have an older brother named Yaga. He is materialistic in nature and is desirous of wealth and kind. I know this because once I saw him eat a fruit which had fallen onto mud and dirt without even washing it. He ate it wholeheartedly. This is the behavior of those who desire wealth over enlightenment. So go to him, and he will give you what you need, instructed the sage Upayaja. And King Drupada was delighted. He fled looking for Yaga. He asked everyone in the village, and they all pointed to the sage he met as he entered the village. The dirty sage with food all over his beard was known as the great sage Yaga. King Drupada was hesitant at first. How will this dirty sage, drenched in the foul smell of rotting fruit, know anything about fire sacrifices, let alone the performance of the impossible Putrakameshti Yaga? He thought to himself. As he conspired, desperation overtook him, and he approached the sage nevertheless. Unlike his younger brother Upayaja, this sage was not in meditation, nor was he unapproachable. The moment he walked near him, the sage greeted him heartily. Hello, dear man. You look to be of wealthy upbringing. Who are you? Inquired the sage Yaga. To which the king of Panchala replied, I am the king of Panchala. My name is King Drupada, and I have come looking for the sage Yaga to perform the Putrakameshti sacrifice, said the king, and the sage nodded, while munching on a half-eaten mango. Yes, the Putrakameshti, yes, he said as he snorted and chewed on the mango, irritating King Drupada. Very difficult sacrifice. But why? What is the purpose to invoke fire himself? Asked the sage, and once more did Drupada explain his predicament. But unlike the last time, the sage Yaga was much more accepting of his desire. You wish to slay a high-born Brahmana known all over the land as the weapons master, a Maharathi, the wielder of a bow 12 feet long, the tutor of the mighty Arjuna himself, who subdued you and your entire army, with just one other person, Bhima, who was also his student. My, you are truly ambitious, King Drupada, said the sage as the king nodded. Performing the sacrifice known as the Putrakameshti to beget a son who would slaughter this man would be difficult. Very difficult indeed, thought the sage Yaga, and Drupada began to fear hesitancy on the sage's acceptance, and immediately said, 10,000 cows and 100,000 dravina will be offered to the sage who can perform this yaga, he said, and immediately, as soon as he said it, the sage Yaga's eyes widened, and the king could see that there was a genuine thirst for wealth in his eyes, much to his comfort. Now that is a lot to offer for vengeance, King Drupada. Are you sure? Asked the sage. As sure as my heart beats, O sage. Please give unto me my desperate desire, said the King Drupada, and the sage smiled. Your offering has pleased me, O king. I will give you not one but 2 children, twins, a boy and a girl, who will ensure the destruction of your enemy. But be warned, the girl must wed to the one they call Arjuna, the archer. Only then will the prophecy come to pass, warned the sage Yaga, and Drupada nodded fervently. Very well, the sacrifice known as the Putrakameshti is very difficult, and not one that I can do myself. Call upon my younger brother Upayaja and tell him his older brother needs his assistance in this sacrifice, instructed Yaga, and Drupada's heart sank once more. No, not this again. I asked your younger brother first, O sage, and he refused. Go and ask again, instructed the sage with a firm and strong tone. And Drupada reluctantly approached the sage Upayaja, and the sage Upayaja agreed immediately. Go forth and tell my brother I am coming, said the sage Upayaja, and King Drupada was flabbergasted. You are? But you said no to me, stammered the king, fearing he might go back on his words. I said no to your evil desire. I respect my brother enough when he tasks me with something to obey him. Now, do you want my assistance or not? Asked the sage, as Drupada apologized profusely and begged him to come. The three of them then made their way to the walled city of Panchala. Putrakameshti. Putrakameshti, really, dear Guru? I have only heard rumors. It is an extremely difficult fire sacrifice to perform. Lord Rama, the king of Ayodhya, was begotten through the Putrakameshti, and you are telling me the king of Panchala organized this? Wow, how amazing! Tell me more, dear Guru. Tell me more. How was this yaga performed? What were the fruits? What did this yaga look like? What? Asked Janamejaya when the Rajaguru Vaishampayana said, Patience, my king, patience, and all will be revealed.